There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another Friday read, starting quite late today. It's 1 o'clock. Holy smokes, I had to get up to teach a 7 a.m. lesson on Zoom back in Tokyo. And that was way too early because I was up late last night finishing editing the Eric Carl Anderson video. So I went back to sleep until almost noon. I mean, I kept waking up and thinking, can I get up now? I went back to sleep. And so here I am, somewhat quite well slept. And yesterday was a bit of a tough day. Now, this is all tongue-in-cheek. I don't want any expressions of sympathy. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it was kind of a bad day because it was the last warm day before we get another cold snap next week. And I had a full day planned. I had the first half a day was stuff planned at home. And then after I did a Zoom chat with a special guest, that video will be coming soon to a BookTube channel near you, I sauntered out to go out. I so rarely leave my apartment, and I had a bunch of bookish things to do. I wanted to go to a couple different bookstores, at least one, and I was going to start with Westgate Books. It's the oldest, most established used bookstore in Saskatoon. I've had that interesting experience with the owner who gave me a ride home because of the rain soon after I arrived, and I wanted to go there. And not only to shop for me, the purpose really was I was going to begin, probably not finish, but begin my first shopping spree for one of my top tier Patreons, the Bibliophile Bestie tier, Alina from Rotterdam. And she and I had been conferring about this and that, what she might like, and I had some really good ideas, and I thought maybe for at least one of them, the best place to start was at a used bookstore. If I could find a really great copy, a copy in great condition of one particular book that I think she would like. And then I was going to the new bookstore. I mean, they sell new books, McNally Robinson, which is a wonderful bookstore. Do some shopping there for Alina, and then maybe have coffee or whatever for an hour before there was a book launch there that I really wanted to go to. It was a book about the history of the U.S.-Canada border from an Indigenous perspective, or in consideration of indigeneity, Indigenous issues. I don't know anything about the author, Dr. Benjamin Hoy, but it's a line of blood and dirt creating the Canada-United States border across Indigenous lands. And there was going to be a book launch at 7 p.m. last night, and I was very excited that this bookish afternoon and evening I had lined up. It's been really warm here the last few days, and yesterday it got up to +3. Now, depending on where you live, that maybe doesn't sound warm, but if you know anything about Saskatchewan in the winter, +3 is in January, heading into February, is balmy. So Mom said, if you're going to go out and do anything, go today, kiddo, because it's going to be freezing cold, -20 and such, all starting maybe on the weekend and going until next weekend. Do it now or don't do it at all. Well, what Mom and I hadn't factored into the equation was the wind chill. Oh my God, it was the coldest day that I've ever been out. Now, I was dressed lightly. I just wore one light coat. I had a down-filled vest and my toque and my scarf in my bag because I knew it was going to get colder later in the night. But I was just wearing a light jacket. But when I go to the bus stop from my apartment, the quickest way to do it is to cut across a fundamentalist church's parking lot and lawn. And I love committing that trespass, that I may not trespass against myself. It's a fundamentalist church. And it involves walking over some snowbanks, not, 3 feet high, but maybe 1.5 feet high. And there's a well-worn path. And anyway, I think you know where this story is going, because the snow was softened up by the balmy temperature despite the wind chill. And I lost my footing and crashed through one of those 1.5 feet tall snowbanks and landed flat on my face. Oh, Jesus, I didn't hurt myself, so no pity, please. Just please laugh along with me. That's why I'm telling you this story. And I have never fallen flat on my face. The last time I did was in Tokyo, and I was drunk as a skunk. And Kenji was with me, and he's never really forgotten it. But anyway, so with wounded pride, I picked myself up, brushed myself off, and carried on the few more feet to the bus stop without incident, except the wind was it was a howling, really cold wind, and the bus stop area, the sidewalk and bus stop shelter thing, there was about 2 inches of water, and I was standing in water, and I guess I'll put my warmer winter apparel on while I'm waiting for this bus. And after about 2 minutes, I thought, you know what? No. So I went home. I didn't go out anywhere. I did several really fun bookish things at home that I wouldn't have had time to do, so that's why the Eric Carl Anderson video got started and finished in one day. Those long Zoom chat videos often take more than a week, like weeks sometimes, to edit, and I sailed through it and got up to date with some buddy reads that are related to some of the books I'm going to be talking about today. And yeah, I was not too sorry for myself, but a little bit sorry for myself. I can't go out in the cold unless my mom and dad come pick me up and take me somewhere. Anyway, I'll try again. Alina, don't fret. I'm dying to go on this shopping spree for Alina, and I have a few other patrons at that level that I'm looking forward to going shopping for, and I'm gonna vlog it, and you'll all get to see it, or the ones that give me their consent to put the video up. So yeah, that happened. Otherwise, I've had a good week. It was my birthday, and who cares about birthdays, and especially when you get to be my age. But I got some birthday money, and I spent a chunk of it to get myself a Japanese rice cooker. You remember my Japanese rice cooker in Tokyo, and I miss it so much. I hate making rice on a pot on the stove. It drives me crazy. It's so fiddly. It always either burns or boils over, and if you don't stand and watch it, it just doesn't taste as good as rice made in a Japanese rice cooker. The Japanese do a whole bunch of things so much better than anybody else, and one of them is the technology for making rice. So I splurged and bought myself a Japanese rice cooker. I could get it here. I didn't have to buy it from Japan and have it shipped, but it is a Japanese brand name, Zoji Rushi. So I've been eating rice day and night. That is one of the highlights of my week. All right, here are some other highlights of the week on BookTube and on my Patreon webpage.
Sometimes I get into drag on my channel for videos, but usually it's just me. It's Dake Heavy.
That's fabulous. Well, I think I need some of your video editing skills.
Yes, well, I am for hire.
That's what I've heard. Your reputation precedes you.
Oh, God.
Oh, this is the queerest bite-sized book chat I've ever had. How fabulous.
Oh, good. Yay, I love queer shit.
But I think if you're anything like me, and I don't even know what I'm like anymore, having loved this book so much, but if you're anything like me, I think you're going to love it. Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel, and I have BookTube royalty here today. This is as if I need to even tell you his name. It's Simon Savage. No, I'm kidding. It's Eric. I don't mean that it was inappropriate. It just didn't work. I really disliked that book, and I haven't read anything else. Oh, and I read a collection of her short stories that was pretty good. This book has been getting a certain amount of positive attention, although I've heard mixed reviews of it as well. All right, and I've had a really great reading week. Lots of things to tell you. I finished 4 books, and I've started 3. No bails. Still no bails in 2023. I finished this book, which was a buddy read with Heidi of My Reading Life, Boys in Oil by Taylor Brorby. The subtitle is Growing Up Gay in a Fractured Land. Quite enjoyed it. I give it 4 stars. After talking with Heidi with our last check-in, I'm going to sit with it more. I may downgrade it to 3. It didn't really come together as a memoir. The gay part and the oil part, growing up with all the environmental devastation from the oil, he didn't really tie that together very well. I still got a lot out of it, so I'm probably going to stick with my 4-star read because there was a lot to enjoy. He described the process of coming out and being out, or deciding to remain closeted on the prairie. A lot of that resonated with my experience. He described relationships and exploring his sexuality quite well, sometimes better than others, but that part of the writing was quite powerful. He introduced me to some environmental writers that I'd never heard of, and Heidi and I are going to buddy read at least one of those books that he mentioned. And getting back to the whole gay part of it, because that's pretty much all I have to say about the environmental, I think. His parents just did not accept him, yet both of his grandfathers did. And that's interesting and confounding that the parents never came around, but yet both of their parents, both of their fathers, did accept him. And I couldn't understand why there wasn't more about how that all worked within the dynamics of the family. Like, wouldn't the grandfathers try to talk sense into their kids, the author's parents, and say, give your head a shake? But there's nothing about that in here. There's a lot about uncles and aunts and his sister and stuff. And where is the family conversation that Taylor Brorby himself may or may not have been a part of about the parents' rejection of him? I couldn't understand why there wasn't something about that. But anyway, that's fine, I guess. It's his book. There was a lot of fluff in here. There was a lot of descriptions of things like what he was wearing, or just side anecdotes about nothing that padded it. I didn't think it needed to be nearly as long, so it was a bit of a mixed bag. I'm glad I read it. I maybe liked it a little bit more than Heidi, or I may change my mind. So I recommend it to you kind of half-assedly. The half-assedness of my reviews stops there. The next one I finished was a Dean Street Press Furrowed Middlebrow romance, which I did on ebook, but it was such a good book, I've already ordered my paper copy. Clothes Pegs by Susan Scarlett, a.k.a. Noel Streatfeild. 1939 romance novel. So I have done a review expressing my astonishment at how much I loved it. I don't think I'll say too much about it here. There is a full review. It's very short, about 8 minutes long, about it, but I recommend it, especially if you like that kind of thing. But even if you don't, especially if you think you don't like romance novels, I loved it. It was a page turner, and I was really invested in the story. You know, I like British women's fiction of that era, so it's not a huge shock, but it was such a conventional kind of fairy tale structure of a romance, the rich man and the poor young woman, and they come together in the end. So it followed that very conventional romance novel pattern, and I didn't have the slightest bit of gorge rising in my throat. I was really in it. I was really with the story, invested in the story the whole time. And I think a big part of it is it was just extremely well written, and the characters were quite vivid. So I'm going to be reading more. She did write some adult fiction and memoir under her own name, but early in her writing life, she published a dozen of these. I don't know if they're all romances, but I'm going to guess they are, under the pen name Susan Scarlett. And Furrowed Middlebrow, Dean Street Press, has brought them all back into print in the last little while, so I'm going to be reading them, so stay tuned for more on Susan Scarlett. And next, I finished just yesterday this Scottish novel, Mayflies by Andrew O'Hagan, published in 2020, one of Scott of Gunpowder Fiction and Plot's favorite books, and I read it along with a bunch of other wonderful booktubers. I think they're all booktubers, and maybe there's a few of them I don't know much about, but for Anne and Amy's Fiction Addiction Book Club, and this was their first pick. And oh my goodness, did I have a complicated reaction to this. But yet my criteria for, I don't care so much about the ratings, but to me, I know a 5-star read when I read it, and I know a 4-star read when I read it, and it's purely subjective emotional ranking. So because it was so moving at the end and at various points throughout, but especially after kind of struggling with certain aspects of this novel, to get to the end and to be obliterated with, you know, the closest I've come to sobbing in recent memory, that's automatically a 5-star read. Because if the flaws or the things I didn't like pull me out of the story, then I'm not going to be moved. That is just the way I am. So I just always follow not my nose, but my heart, my soul. And also because the more that I thought about this, is one of the things that I did when I wasn't allowed to go out by the weather yesterday, was listen to all the check-ins on Voxer from the other lovely people. So the book club is run by Ange of Ange's Book Chatter. I think I have been calling her by her old channel name. I'm sorry about that, Ange. I just noticed that. I thought Ange with an E was your new name. It's your old name, Ange's Book Chatter. And the other co-host is BookTube with Amy. Amy of BookTube with Amy. And the other people who were doing the read-along, doing the book discussion on Voxer were Gemma of Gem of Books, Jacqueline of Spread Book Joy. I haven't heard much in the group from Scott of Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, but he's in there and I hope to hear from him. Okay, I noticed there was somebody named Alice, so that must be Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, a channel I'm not familiar with, so I need to check that out. I think those are the ones. If I've missed anybody, please tell me in the comments. I didn't listen to any of their check-ins until I'd finished the book, so I had time to do all that, and hearing various responses, especially to the things that I wasn't sure if I liked, I kind of could see my way through to that and revisited some of the quotes that really affected me and kind of considered them more deeply and realized that even the things that I was not so happy about, a lot of them, they were leading me in a direction that made the ending as powerful as it did. So this is very much a book of two halves, and most readers, certainly in this group, didn't care nearly as much for the first half, which is about this group of Scottish lads at the age of 18, just finished high school, or I think just, high school, and they go to Manchester for some famous concert. It was a real conference, 1986, with the Smiths and New Order and all of them. And that was my era. Summer of 86. But they were so rowdy, and I don't mean just in a violent way, but just so many in-jokes and so much kind of stupid adolescent stuff, and I didn't really care about the stuff about the music, but some of it was amusing. There was a large cast of characters. The two main characters are the narrator, Jimmy, and his best friend, Tully. And Tully is one of the most magnetic, kind of fascinating characters in any book written by a straight man. Let me qualify it, but still, it's quite a compliment. You can't help but love him. So Andrew O'Hagan made me fall in love with him. I felt that Jimmy, the narrator, but that often happens with narrators, so I could kind of overlook it. His character wasn't fleshed out, but at 18, the narrator, Jimmy, had been abandoned by his parents. They got divorced and they just kind of left him to raise himself, finish raising himself and carry on with life. And Tully and Tully's mom kind of took Jimmy under their wing. And I found all that really interesting. But so much of this first half of the book was all about these antics and partying and drinking and trying to get laid. And I mean, it's all stuff that happens at that age, even for me. Well, I was a little late because I didn't come out till I was 20. It wasn't interesting. Yet there was little snippets of the really interesting part, Tully being worried about his dad, and Tully and his dad not having a close relationship, and Tully being very warm and protective of Jimmy, but those were just little snippets. And then there was all this crap that I really could have done without. But and I'm not going to talk for much longer, because I can't say very much about the second half, which was incredibly powerful. But there's one paragraph at one particular concert the writing was beautiful. I love the writing. And there's this scene of James being high and drunk, and in the midst of this big crowd, watching his friends a little bit far, that are standing a little bit away from him and being just washed over, being suffused with the music. And it was powerful. And I thought, okay, now I finally get. He's led me to this moment that, it was something that was life-changing for him and a real bonding experience before everybody kind of separates and goes on their separate ways. So then the second half is 30 years later. They are 50, and there is a tragedy that befalls one of the main characters. I won't say any more than that. It's something you probably want to discover for yourself, but it was fascinating to see the difference in the two men 30 years later, and to see how their friendship enabled them to deal with this crisis. So by the end, it was just incredibly moving. So I'm so glad to agree with Scott. My agreement is a little bit complicated, but that's fine. I did absolutely love it, despite my qualms with some things about the first half. Recommend it to you very highly. And the last one that I finished is one of the few books in my life that I can say I've now read 3 times. A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. I read this to one of my Bibliophile Bestie patrons and finished it last night. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And this is the second time I've read it. My first reread was since I have become a booktuber, and now my third one, and I still have not told you really much about it. Because telling you what it's about is not really telling you much about the book. It's set in 1920 in northern England, and a wounded, shell-shocked, I guess art restorer is the best word to describe what he does. But he's just, 2 or 3 years home from the war. He's got he's got physical and mental wounds from being in the war. His wife has just left him, and he accepts this job in this small little town, Oxgodby, to uncover a mural that had been painted on the church in the medieval era. And some old lady in the town had recently died and left money for this project. So that's the opening premise, and this book is about that, and it's a beautiful description of the process of uncovering that and what goes through his mind. It's so beautiful, but it's also about everything. It's about art, history, romantic love, friendship, home. What is home? Because he gets really immersed in the community, and he knows he's only there for a short time, but he does start to consider, should I just stay here because people are so nice to me? People are, such a lovely place. Impermanence, erotic love. There is a gay theme, sub-theme, I guess. Is that a word? Sub-theme? Oh my God, it's just about absolutely everything. I don't know how we got it all in here. And I suppose it's not a book for everyone, but it's a book for most people. I can't wait for my fourth reread in a year or two. It's a book that I need to keep reading over and over again. Oh, the other thing that it's about is social exclusion, both back in the medieval era and today. And every time I read it, I find new things or find things that I had forgotten about, but now strike me as being really central to the novel. What a rich literary text. Reading it out loud was a joy, an absolute joy. Okay, and I have started 3, and I'm probably the only person who's going to notice that I swapped out one book for what I told you last week I was going to start. I don't think the rest of you really care, but because of library access, in fact, I think it was Scribd access issues that Joe had with getting the David Levitt novel, we put that one off in favor of a book she could get that I'm very much dying to read. I think I've talked about it in a book haul. It's a gay novel from last year, Just by Looking at Him by Ryan O'Connell. Look at that cover. And it is about a gay man is he in Hollywood? Certainly in California. And he's a TV show writer, which is very much the story of the author. Ryan O'Connor has his own Netflix special, or I don't know if it's an ongoing thing. I don't think so. I think it's I don't know. And it's based on his memoir, and he's written for Will and Grace and Queer as Folk. And like the author, the protagonist here has cerebral palsy. So he is disabled, and he is struggling. I'm not sure if struggle is the right word because I'm only early into it, but he's certainly dealing with all the stereotypes of queer male desire, perfect bodies and so on. And he has those desires, and he does not have that body. And he's in a relationship with a guy who we find out all about his penis in the opening paragraph, one of my favorite openings to any gay novel I've ever read. And the tone is really light and hilarious, especially if you do it on audio. So I'm reading it and doing it on audio, and sometimes if I'm busy and can't have the book open, I just listen because it's narrated. The audiobook is narrated by Ryan O'Connell, and he adds so much gay inflection and intonation to the word. He just makes it come alive. I'm really enjoying it. Time will tell, because it's very early, whether it's also going to be moving or deep. That's the way the story is kind of headed, but let's see if he arrives there. I'm feeling very disposed to, very impressed by what I've read and listened to so far, and it's cracking me up and making me think about all these issues about the gay male ideal body, because he's writing about issues that all gay men can relate to in their own way, and he is portraying his disability in a way that is fascinating and important. So we'll keep going with it. I am also loving the way this 1930 novel is starting out. Rosamond Lehmann's second novel, A Note in Music. I'm exactly 25 pages in. It's about a bored somewhat unhappily, quite unhappily, find out 30-something-year-old British woman and her really boring husband. I don't have much else to say about it. This is my third novel by her. Based on that, I can just say Rosamond Lehmann takes you really deep into the characters, into the story, and her prose is anything but light. And it's a joy to read. My early impression is this is going to be a hit. And finally, the last book that I started is this Indian novel, Teen Couple Have Fun Outdoors by Aravind, Jayan. It's really holding my interest. I'm just a few pages in, 25 pages in on this one, and it is about an Indian family that are not, and the family is not particularly traditional. The narrator, at least thus far, is the younger brother, and his older brother has the scandal. The scandal is that somehow somebody secretly taped him and his girlfriend fooling around in a public park. They thought they were in private, they thought nobody was around, but somebody or other taped them having sex, and then years later, at least a couple of years later, it's gone online and it's gone viral. And his parents find out about it. So it's a huge family crisis. It's very early days. It's told with a lot of humor as well. I just am riveted by it. That kind of sexual, I haven't read anything, it's a topic that, against the backdrop of Indian culture, is just all the more fascinating to read about. So keep going with this too. So those are what I've finished, and I'm not doing too well with my goal was to get my current reads ceiling down to 10 books, and I'm not there, but I'm not too far off, and I'm just not going to worry about it. I don't want to get up to 30 books like I did a couple years ago, but if I do, that year that I was up to 30 books, it did feel like way too much, but I also still had I think it was the same year that was the best reading year I ever had, so I don't know that I need to or want to rein myself in too much, but I'm going to try also to just keep tabs on it without worrying so much about the number, but just don't push the river. It flows by itself. So I have 3 books potentially that I would like to start. This one I'm starting for sure because I'm reading this to a different top tier patron. Her one book a year that she gets audio narrated, and she has chosen Happy Sands by Barb Howard, which was a great read for me last year. I talked about it quite a bit. I interviewed the author. I'll put a link to that lovely chat, and you get to read it for a second time to my patron. And I can't decide between these two, so I may just start both of them. What the hell? My read or on haul video last week, this was one of the books I said, if I don't read this or attempt to read this year, it's going out of my house. It's a collection of short stories from the Philippines, Platinum, by Sionil José. And I've done a little bit more reading on Sionil José. He just died, I think, a couple of years ago, very elderly, 97 or something. Really the granddaddy of Filipino literature, and I don't know anything about Filipino literature, so I think I want to start this. I have had really good luck. I had an astounding experience of finding obscure shit at used bookstores in Tokyo, letting them languish on my shelves forever, and then picking them up and absolutely loving them. And I'm hoping this will be another one, but it doesn't always work out that way. So my second novel by, I don't think that's going to pick up on the microphone. Oh, I'm not doing the microphone, so sorry about the noise. I'm going to quickly finish up here. My second novel by the British writer Elizabeth Berridge, Sing Me Who You Are, which is one of the best titles. And isn't that a great cover? I read her last novel last year, and this one was published, quite early, 1967, so this might be one of her earlier novels. This one is, the protagonist, Harriet, is 30-ish, awkward, and vulnerable, same as me. Now that I've had a birthday, I'm no longer in my 20s, people. Coming to claim her aunt's inheritance. Her aunt's inheritance is a tumble-down bus. Okay, well, there's the bus in the back. Oh, I think I'm definitely going to start this. I may start both of them. What the hell? My goodness, I forgot one of the books I'm committed to starting in the coming week as well. So yeah, let's completely overdo it, shall we? But this one is short, and I'm going to be reading it at a very leisurely pace as a buddy read with Heidi, and it just completely slipped my mind because I'm doing it on ebook. And this is a book by the Rwandan author Scholastique Mukasonga. It's her latest one to be translated, as far as I'm aware. Translated from the French by Mark Polizotti. Kibogo. Kibogo? Let's see if I can find the pronunciation.
Okay, so if you have any questions.
I think I just looked it up and I heard Scholastique Mukasonga herself pronounce the title in French as Kibogo. Kibogo. So I'm going to go with that. And this is about colonialism. It's about the clash between the traditional Rwandan beliefs and the Christian crap that those evil colonialists, missionaries, the scum of the earth, tried to replace those ancient traditional beliefs with. Sounds fascinating. Can't wait. Gonna have my reading cut out for me this week. Happiest of problems. Seize the day. Thanks for watching.